for getting here today on this slushy, snowy, great New York morning. I know it took people some time. I also know, and I know this from my own team and my own staff, let's see, there's flus going around. What is it? RSV is going around. Everybody. So there's a number of people who have been sick. So good news is this meeting is recorded. So we'll get all the materials and information to the folks who couldn't make it today. But you all, the troopers, appreciate your being here. So I want to thank E&Y for hosting us today. They really stepped up. They brought us breakfast. They brought us warmth. They brought us a somewhat great view. Appreciate you all. It's a fantastic view, even in the snow. So I'm Abby Jo Siegel. I lead the Mayor's Office for Talent and Workforce Development, otherwise known as NYC Talent. And as many of you know, we staff the Workforce Development Council and Board. I have an incredible team of about 35 people who do that work with me, along with my many colleagues in various agencies, some of whom are here today, including Commissioner Gross from Small Business Services. Thank you, Commissioner, for being here. So for folks, we sent it out, and everybody should know, the mayor announced that this week is Jobs Week. And we kicked it off on Monday with an announcement that New York City has broken our jobs record yet again. So 4,770,981 jobs in the city. Just for a little context, everybody, that's more than the population of the states of Oregon, Louisiana, and Connecticut. That's just the number of jobs. So, and so it's great that we're all here because we know that what we need to do as a collective focus on talent and workforce development is really how do we make sure these jobs translate into economic mobility and shared prosperity for New Yorkers. And so that's what we all do from our various perches every day and collectively. So with that, I have the privilege of turning over the mic to Michelle Adams, who's been a great partner in launching this council and really working with us. So Michelle, here you go.
All right, let's give it up for Abby Jo. She said she had good news this morning. I was like, are you handing out hand sanitizer after listing all the diseases? So welcome, everybody. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you for braving the weather. I mean, you are all true stalwarts, and we so appreciate it. So on behalf of Rob Spire, who unfortunately couldn't be here today, but sends his regards. Hello, John Calvelli. Good morning, sir. I wanted to just say thank you again for being here. So much has been happening. Abby Jo referenced Jobs Week. We're so excited about the announcements. We're so thrilled that all of you in this room are part of this and are making the work happen. And the last time we were together, we brought up the fact that we really wanted to amplify the messages. And so to that end, we had sent around a questionnaire to ask you who are your communications people, who are your marketing people within your organizations. Many of you returned that survey, and alas, many of you did not return the survey. So we're going to relaunch that survey after this meeting to make sure we're getting that engagement from your organizations, which is super important. So for instance, when Jobs Week is happening, then we can amplify that. And, when great press releases are coming out about the numbers, you can get that not only to your employees and your teams, but to the people in your echo chambers. Really important. So today is really exciting for us because I have the distinct honor of introducing a woman who has worked in public service for most of her adult life. And she is a terrific New Yorker. She was just recently minted a deputy mayor, which hooray for that. I mean, really, really great. It's Tiffany there she is, Tiffany Raspberry. Tiffany has been fighting the fight for New Yorkers for over 20 years in government affairs, community engagement. She's the epitome of what makes this city tick. And just this past week alone, she was up in Albany fighting for New York's fair share in Albany, which is so important in these times as we're going through the budget process with the governor, gearing up for the legislative process with our Senate and our Assembly, which is complicated on a good day. So during tough times, it's even more difficult. And Tiffany's fine judgment and sage and very calm hand definitely takes us through that process. And today, she was hoping to be here in person, but she is actually now in DC with the mayor, also fighting for New York chair in DC, which again, not going to comment on what's going on in DC. Obviously, every day is a new adventure. I'll just say it like that. And we're all doing the best we can in very uncertain times. And so, Tiffany, we're so grateful that you were able to carve out this time to speak to us. And I want to just say this, and I've known Tiffany a long time. This is not the last time you're going to see her with our council, okay? She and her team are staying engaged because legislation that's moving through, whether it's Albany, whether it's DC, whether it's the city council that impacts the work we're doing, we're staying on top of. We're staying closely aligned to her and her team. So Tiffany, on behalf of all of us, you have an open invitation to come to every meeting. You have an open invitation to send your team. And we couldn't be more thrilled that you're on our side. So with that, I'm going to open it up to Tiffany. And then I think we're going to take questions, right, Abby Jo? Or what do we do? Oh, we're going to do Maria and that. Okay. So with that, Tiffany, why don't you start talking so we make sure we can hear you?
Good morning. It's so great to see everyone. I'm sorry that I can't be there in person. I really wanted to join you today. Michelle, thank you so much for that gracious introduction. Abby Jo, thank you for inviting me today. I'm so honored to join all of the members of the New York City Workforce Development Council and board members. Like you, we are focused on the news coming out of Washington. Like many of you know, I lead a team of experienced government affairs professionals, and we, as the City of New York, also have an office of full-time staffers here in Washington, D.C. So we have people on the ground here 24 hours a day monitoring all of the developments as they unfold. As Mayor Adams has said throughout the past few weeks, our values have always been clear. Regardless of immigration status, everyone in New York City should be able to get an education, seek medical care, and practice their faith. We are reviewing all of the executive orders as they are released and determining their impacts on New York. But we believe strongly that we should not be overreactive. These are rapidly evolving situations that we are monitoring and evaluating on a daily basis. We have seen almost every day when an announcement comes out from Washington, it has gotten either reversed or delayed shortly thereafter. So we remain focused on our vision to make New York City the best place to raise a family and keep New Yorkers safe by making the city more affordable and increasing opportunities for workforce and talent. And I want to just share with you a story or a quote you may have heard in the news. House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries recently invoked a story about New York Yankees captain Aaron Judd. You'll often hear Mayor Adams do the same to illustrate his strategic approach in responding to these new initiatives. And he said that we have to be selective in our political battles, just as Aaron Judd is in his batting style. You know, we're going to swing at the ones that matter for New Yorkers. And I believe that this analogy underscores a belief that both Mayor Adams and Leader Jeffrey shares, that we as New Yorkers should be focused on our efforts on significant issues that impact our citizens rather than engaging in every political confrontation. And so we know that we have a lot on the line for New Yorkers, and Mayor Adams and my team, as well as all of the leaders at City Hall, are standing strong and standing together to help protect all of New Yorkers' interests. So with that, thank you so much, and I would love to take any questions that you may have.
We're going to do questions now. We just need them into the mic because Tiffany has to go to another thing. So please.
Yeah, I can wait. I have until 9:45.
Okay. Would you prefer to take? Well, let's take some questions now, and then if there's more after Maria Flynn speaks, that's great. Any questions? Come on, folks. You're New Yorkers.
Should I start calling people out? No.
Good morning, Tiffany. It's Jessica Johnson from Johnson Security, and thank you for your leadership and the work that you're doing both here in the city and in the nation's capital. Will your team be able to identify some of the best practices that are coming out of other workforce initiatives in Washington and across the country? Granted, New York is its own special, we're one of a kind here. But there may be things that we can do better by learning from what's going on. Will you all have the opportunity to see some of those best practices in the meetings you have this week?
Yes, and so that's a great question. Thank you so much for that, Jessica. You're absolutely right. And so one of the other things that my team does is we maintain relationships with other offices of mayors throughout the country. So just about every mayor in the country of a big city has an office here in DC with at least like one representative or a representative or an external representative. We are constantly meeting with the representatives from the other major cities in America. And so we can definitely, if you'd like, convene a meeting specifically to discuss workforce initiatives and look at ways in which we can collaborate more together.
Absolutely, and that's also something, we recently joined the U.S. Conference of Mayors Workforce Development Council, so to make sure that we're doing that. So we're happy to do that in partnership with Tiffany's team.
Great, thank you.
Folks just say who they are before.
Hi, Tiffany. Meryl Pond with the Partnership for New York City. Thank you for taking the time this morning when I know it's going to be a very busy day for you. Question on the status of WIOA, what you're hearing, what would be useful for the Workforce Development Council to know about the status and where there's ways that we can support your work on this issue.
Yes, so that's a great question. Thank you so much. You know, we are spending every day making sure that we're up to date. So what we're asking in the next coming weeks is we're going to share with you our analysis of the developments coming out of DC, and then perhaps we can have all of the different companies here engage with our representatives on both sides of the aisle. There are interests that you all have with both Republican House and Senate members as well as Democratic ones. And so I don't have a direct action plan for you today, but I will be able to circle back in the next few weeks with one.
Hi.
Hello.
Good morning. Katie Gostiggy with Goodwill, New York, New Jersey. I did want to ask about the city's payments to nonprofits. And then obviously last year we had, feels like a year. Last week, we all had a big scare about delays, 90 to 100 days. We're already floating the city quite a bit of money with late payments. So I know that there have been some op-eds and other indicators to really ask Mayor Adams and Mox, who I know is working hard, but to really speed up those efforts to pay. We have over $7 million of receivables into the city and different agencies. It's really important that those get paid. So if there are delays, we are not even more in debt. And so if that could, sort of be proactive, is there any plans to take stronger action to pay your receivables?
Yes, thank you for that. And so we've been talking about that at the executive level of the administration, and we know how very much important on-time payments are. And so there are definitely staff members working around the clock to make sure we get caught up on those payments. And I will go back and flag specifically that Goodwill New York has a significant number of. Yes.
All of us.
Yeah, thanks, thanks, Katie.
All of us.
Thanks, Katie. And I do want to call out the work of the Executive Committee of the Workforce Development Board for the meetings they've had with Commissioner Flores from Mox, as well as the newly appointed Executive Director, Michael Cedillo, who's at the Mayor's Office of Nonprofit Services, to really try to tackle this issue. It's obviously a big issue for the workforce providers, but for human services and nonprofits across the board. And thank you, absolutely is on the executive team's level, it's on FDM's radar, very focused on it. And we do recognize that particularly with the scare of last week, it's ever more important. So thank you for raising it. Angie.
Hi, Tiffany. Angie Connick from New York University. EDC just put out a terrific report at the end of last year that New York City is really a university town with over 100 different higher ed establishments here. And so I'd love to hear your insights. We're an economic driver. We have a lot of jobs. We certainly from a research perspective, from a student visa perspective, and just from the economic mobility that higher ed can often kind of be for people. It feels like we, like many others, definitely have a big stake in what's happening. So would love any insights that you have on higher ed and what you're seeing, what you're advocating for, and kind of how this fits into the overall agenda.
Thank you so much. That is also a great question. You know, we've been very much focused on protecting all of the various industries in New York, and education, and the education sector probably is one of the largest producer of jobs. And we are working very hard, and we can schedule an individual meeting if you'd like with higher ed institutions to talk about the very specific items on your agenda.
Great, thank you.
Thanks, Angie. And for folks who don't know, I think New York City has more students in higher ed than the population of the city of Boston.
We got a question right here.
Good morning, Tiffany. Oh, somewhere over there. Good morning, Tiffany. This is Grace Bonilla from United Way of New York City. Thank you for being with us. And I'll echo my colleagues. Thanks. I know that you're in DC doing a lot of good work. But one of the things that have been concerns for the nonprofits that we work with is the lack of clarity coming out of the DOE for parents. We know that there has been a decrease of attendance in New York City public schools since the administration. There's a lot of fear, and of course, as you can imagine, that directly impacts the workforce ability to produce in New York City. So any idea when we will hear something more definitive going to parents on the fact that they should be sending their kids to school and that school should be a safe place?
Thank you for that question, Grace. So I think that the mayor has said on a number of occasions that he believes that parents, we don't want to instill fear in New Yorkers, right? And so that's why we're not overreacting to a lot of things and the gossip that's being spread. He encourages parents to send their children to school every day, excuse me, for families to utilize our healthcare systems, for people to dial 911 if they're faced with any emergencies. And as far as significant attendance drops in the public school system, we don't believe that we've seen significant attendance drops. For the week that is being discussed, the weather was significantly low, and it was Regents Week. And so typically on weeks like that, attendance is slightly lower, but across the board to date, we have not seen a significant drop in attendance. But you're absolutely right. We will continue to ensure New Yorkers and parents. I would be open to listening to any recommendations for how you think that the administration can do a stronger job of that. Thank you.
Good morning. Thank you so much for joining us. My name is Lenore Friedlander. I'm here representing SEIU Local 32BJ, which is a labor union with tens of thousands of members in New York City and surrounding areas. My question sort of piggybacks on the previous one that relates to the rights of immigrants and immigrant workers, and what it was good to hear that the city is concerned about all workers, but it is a rapidly changing environment, and immigrants of a whole variety of statuses, including folks who are who have lawful work permits that sometimes get canceled, folks who are on DACA, folks who are naturalized, undocumented workers, and citizens. All contribute to the economy, and many are members of unions. So just want to hear a little more about what the city may be doing. It's good to hear that you're connected with other governors. There is legal action that's being taken, and we really encourage the city to consider selective support for some of the lawsuits that are going forward, like challenging the end of birthright citizenship and all those kinds of things that create fear, confusion, and as was previously mentioned, make people really worried about sending their kids to school, going shopping, seeking medical care, reporting to crimes to the police. It just contributes to an overall unhealthy and unsafe environment. So glad to hear the vision. Would be interested in hearing a few more specifics.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that question. You know, one of the things that I'm most proudest of in my time in this administration has been the work that we've done around immigration. Mayor Adams in the city of New York was at the forefront over the past several years in pushing the conversation so that we could extend PTS for more individuals who are coming into the country and making sure that cities across the country had the resources that they needed to provide for our new neighbors and families. And so, as I said, we're continuing to review the executive orders as we do with all laws that come from the federal government. So we don't want to speak on hypotheticals, but we are continuing to work across the table with our community partners to provide resources, including hosting resource fairs attended by hundreds of asylum seekers to connect them with organizations and services as they transition from our care on their journey. Our workforce development team and small business services has led the effort to connect over 1,000 asylum seekers with jobs in New York. Our asylum seeker application help center has helped many new arrival families complete more than 91,000 asylum seeker applications, workforce authorization, and TPS applications. And so we are continuing that work every day in New York, and we will continue to do that.
Thank you, Tiffany, and thank you for the great questions, everyone. Really appreciate it. Due to time, we need to move on, but Tiffany, I think, is going to stay on for a little bit more. But again, this is not the only time we will see Tiffany. And Tiffany, please know that this group is here to help support and do what we need to do to make sure New Yorkers are well positioned for success. So this is our crew. Sorry.
Thank you. It was great speaking with all of you.
Awesome. So let's give an applause for and to thank her up. Thank you for representing us in Washington right now. We really appreciate that. Next, I want to introduce and invite up to the mic Maria Flynn, who's the president and CEO of Jobs for the Future. Jobs for the Future is one of the leading nonprofits, if not the leading nonprofit, focused on talent and workforce development. Working across many different parts of the discipline across the country, working in partnership with many city states, as well as a lot of nonprofits and on-the-ground partners. As president and CEO, Maria has led Jobs to the Future through a period of tremendous growth. It's just incredible. And it's the go-to for many of us to really understand how policy, programming, and impact intersect. I've had the pleasure of working with Jobs to the Future on and off for at least 10 years now, and have learned so much from the organization and from Maria particularly. Throughout her career, both at Jobs for the Future, but also at the U.S. Department of Labor and Training Administration and across workforce development, Maria's constantly pragmatic, advocating for smart decisions and for really leaning in where she thinks impact will happen. And so I'm so glad she's here. She was a great contributor as a member of the Future Workers Task Force. And I can't speak highly enough about her expertise and the insights she has, particularly at this time. We're all trying to read the tea leaves of what's happening down in DC and what it means for us. I'm not thinking, Maria, you're going to have all the answers for us, but I want to make sure everybody here knows who you are and knows who Jobs for the Future is. So as we sort of navigate this administration change, we're all working on this together to really make sure folks are well positioned for good jobs. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. Thanks so much, Abby Jo, for that introduction and invitation to be here with you all today. I think when I accepted the invite a couple months ago, like little did we know the moment we would be in. So I actually think it's a great time for you all to be gathering, and I will kind of share as much as I know and kind of recommendations that I have, that with the caveat that the news seems to be changing by the hour. And just so you all know, I think at JFF, we're really in this with you. So we're a national nonprofit, but we do administer federal grants. We're a federal contractor. So we are also kind of navigating the impact of a lot of the federal executive orders and other guidance. So a couple things. I'll start with just a little bit on the current context, and I'll talk a bit about WIOA, the latest that we have heard about that. Talk a bit maybe about some of the appointees that we've been talking to, both at labor and education, and then happy to answer any questions that you all have. So I think the best way for me to describe the current context is confusion, right? And as Abby Jo mentioned, I spent 16 years at the U.S. Department of Labor across the Clinton and Bush administrations, and so I still have a lot of great friends there who are civil servants, and they, I think unfortunately are navigating this as we are. A lot of times they get to work in the morning and are trying to figure out what happens overnight, right? So I think it's a time that we have to kind of give the civil servants a lot of kind of grace as they navigate this, especially for agencies like the Employment and Training Administration, where there hasn't been an assistant secretary nominated yet, and as of Monday, there were no political staff in the agency at all. So it's career staff solely who are navigating this moment. Building on some of the points before and some of the questions, to me, like in this moment, even though the OMB freeze on spending has been rescinded, I know that the payments can be slow. We're experiencing that ourselves when we go to draw down on our grants, and so I just want to underscore that is a factor that you all should be looking at, staying on top of. I don't know if there's much we can do about it, but it is, it's a real thing, and it's something that we have never experienced before. So when you go to draw down that money, it's taking quite a while to get reimbursed. So I just want to acknowledge that and underscore that it's a real factor that we're dealing with. In terms of WIOA, first I want to acknowledge that I know that there were provisions in the bipartisan bill that did not get enacted that New York City wasn't totally in favor of. So I want to acknowledge that. We at JFF, we are hopeful that the bill gets picked back up and moved, and I'll explain a little bit why. So one worry that we have is that if there is a WIOA bill that, where authorization has expired, that's going to make it easier for the administration to zero out that legislation. And what we are hearing is that, the Trump's first budget, which I guess is probably going to come out in the next couple of weeks, it may zero out WIOA entirely, is what we're hearing. And I think if I would say it's unlikely that Congress would do that, but I think our worry is that if it hasn't been reauthorized and that if it's technically an expired piece of legislation, does that make it more vulnerable than programs that have a current authorization? So I think that's a factor just to look at. I spoke with Senator Schumer's office on Friday. They are very, very eager to get this bill moving and have asked for help getting Republicans refocused on it, since there was bipartisan support as of mid-December. I think they are also feeling that once budget reconciliation happens, over the next couple of weeks, there's going to be pressure on both sides of the aisle in Congress to actually show progress, right? To actually show that they have the ability to come together and move bills while, there's, some chaotic things happening over on the executive branch, right? So how can the legislative branch really come together and show momentum? And, Schumer and others are really seeing the WIOA bill as like something that is easy, that could be jumped on and could be moved forward without a lot of reworking. So never know what's going to happen, but I would say so the interest hasn't died down. And even though Congresswoman Virginia Foxx, who was chair of the House committee, is no longer in that position. She has moved over to the House Rules Committee, and they actually think that that's a good thing because she could actually help get this kind of back on the schedule. So, so I would keep your eyes on it. And I think just something to think about is obviously that I know there are parts around the percent required of funding to go to training and concerns about some of the incentives and sanctions and that type of thing. But I think really thinking through like, how do we best like support in this moment to avoid something worse happening? So I think that's how I would be thinking about it right now. I also just want to underscore, I think that the voice of business and corporations right now is key with Republican leadership right now. So I think the more that, the private sector representatives, the council and the board can rally behind some of these reforms, I think the time is really good for that. Everyone's voice is important, but I would say like, especially having Republicans hear from business right now would be terrific. And I think just the more, kind of goes without saying, but the more you can really speak to your impact and the outcomes, right? I think that this is, we're hearing like these extreme stories about what DOGE is looking at, but I think that even if you look into kind of the day-to-day of the agencies, like over the next couple of years, I do think that efficiency and outcomes and impact are going to be a common theme that we're going to be hearing a lot of. We did hear yesterday that the Secretary Designee for Labor, she finally got a hearing scheduled for February 12th next week, which is great because it had not been scheduled before. As you probably have read, there's a lot of speculation as to whether her confirmation will go through. There's kind of a interesting divide shaping up because she is seen as someone who is pretty pro-labor, which many Republicans have concerns about. And so I think there's a question as to, how strongly the president will push for her nomination to go through. I've also heard that there's like it's showing some of the possible like disconnect between some of the Trump views on workers and labor and the Vice President Vance's views on those issues, which aren't always aligned. So I think it'll be interesting to see how this all plays out. We were pleasantly surprised to see her nomination. We don't know her personally, but it'll be interesting to watch that hearing. Keith Sonderling, who has been nominated as Deputy Secretary of DOL, is someone that we've known a long time. He was an EEOC commissioner for quite a while. I was excited to see his name go forward. He is really, I would say, like on the cutting edge, thinking through the impact of AI on workers. And so I think we'll be bringing a really interesting point of view to that. Those are like kind of what I'm hearing at the moment. I hope that is somewhat helpful. I've had a conversation with Secretary Designee Linda McMahon at Education. She is very supportive of a lot of things. I think everyone in this room is supportive of, namely career and technical education, short-term credentials, registered apprenticeship programs, a lot of synergy there, a lot of interest in, kind of real like looking at the value of higher education and re-looking at accreditation and things like that. That said, I'm sure you've all also like read that there's probably an executive order coming out soon asking for the Department of Education basically for a plan to dismantle itself, right? So a lot of questions about that we don't know the answer to. She kind of referred to that in our conversation kind of in a roundabout way as well. So I think that there's going to be a lot of conversation, I'm sure, and debate in the press around what does that mean for Department of Ed? What does that mean for different functions? And I expect that will be a lot of what we hear about over the next 4 to 6 weeks. Commerce, I would say, has been quieter, and I don't know if that's because it's just seen as a little less controversial, or they just haven't gotten to focus on commerce yet. But that not as much coming out of that side of the world, although I've noticed that all of the Biden good jobs work has come off of the commerce website. But as far as I know, we run the community practice for the Good Jobs Challenge, and that hasn't been impacted yet, thankfully. I know in your packets, there's information on our no dead ends policy agenda. I encourage you to, you can kind of sign up to be part of that. If you're interested, that is something that we really crafted intentionally to be a bipartisan approach to the issues in this moment, really cutting across education, workforce, and some commerce issues. There's also a link to a really detailed transition memo that we sent to the new administration a few days after Election Day, which outlines a number of really specific ideas that we have put forward. And I know that the incoming teams of labor and education have been discussing those, which is great. But maybe just to end here, I really agree with the even though I'm from Boston and watch the Red Sox, I like the Aaron Judge analogy of being selective of kind of where we weigh in this moment. And that's what we are trying to do at JFF, is really working to play the long game here and not be kind of reactive in the day-to-day shifts and twists and turns. But happy to answer any questions.
Awesome, thank you, Maria. Hear me? Thank you, Maria. Please, questions, again, thank you, yes, a round of applause. And thank you for doing all the work you're doing and your team's doing, but behind the scenes, in front of the scenes, all of it. We need reps like you. All right, Chris Scott.
Dave Bolotsky, CEO of Uncommon Goods. So the last time we had a minimum wage increase was 2007. I heard from somebody somewhat plugged into the administration that it's not out of the question that Trump might be in favor of it. I'm curious if you have any perspective on that, as well as paid family leave.
I would agree that it's not out of the question. I haven't heard specifics, but I do know in the first Trump term, paid family leave, was something they were trying to push forward, especially through Ivanka's leadership. And I think the minimum wage thing is going to be interesting to watch. I don't know if folks read Trump's statement in December as a result of some of the longshoreman labor disputes. Very pro-worker statements, very kind of pro-worker versus technology in some of those statements, which, I think to me, went further than I would have expected. So I think that's where the secretary designee, and if she gets through, and how we actually see a pro-worker agenda being built out, I think there's some promise there. The past couple weeks have worried me a bit, but I think that more than a bit maybe, but I do think that there is something there that will play out.
Thank you for everything you just told us. How can we stay connected with you and your team in the short term, particularly vis-a-vis the members we should be reaching out to? And everybody here has a different network at all different levels, particularly for those of us that have the ability to lever external resources to make the calls and,
Yeah, so
how do we stay close on that?
I'm happy, Abby and Joe and I can stay connected. I'm happy to connect folks with Taylor Mag on our policy team, who runs all of our workforce policy. Happy to do that. If you click through to our transition memo, Taylor's contact info and all of our policy team members are on there. Taylor was on the Schumer call with me, and so she'd be a great person.
Absolutely, and we in our office can help, and I think it's a great opportunity for the outreach team, particularly this time.
Hi, John Cavelli with the Wildlife Conservation Society. I was just curious if you have any insights on the Trump administration's positions on DEI and the impact it'll have on the sector.
Small question.
Yeah. I'll be, we were impacted day one, basically, because JFF was running the Office of Apprenticeship DEI hub on on behalf of the department, and that was, it seems like so long ago, I think it was just last week, was shut down with the executive order. Since then, there's been the court has issued a temporary restraining order on that order, and so we're up and running again. So I think that there is the immediate effect of organizations that are running what I would call like explicitly named DEI federal work that are having to navigate that. And I heard from a civil servant this week that like at JFF, for example, we've restarted, but we've heard that there are a lot of organizations who are opting not to restart because they don't want to be put in a worse position down the road. So I think there's that bucket. But then I do think that there is this broader issue that we all need to be navigating around how do we think about what language we are using? How do we not move away from our visions and our missions in this moment? And that's like a conversation we're having a lot within my organization. So I think that again, just sharing like something that I thought was better than expected. We did receive some contract modification language on a different contract recently where there was some minor changes to kind of the subpopulation language that we are prioritizing, but it wasn't what I was afraid of, which was like what it was maybe adding a few new groups, but it wasn't an overhaul at all. And so I think if that's a sign of how some of this is going to be handled, then I think that's something we can work with. But I think as a sector, like we need to be thinking about, how do we keep uplifting the missions and how do we keep focusing on the populations with the most significant barriers to advancement.
Hi, can you hear me?
Hello?
Yeah. Eliza Ware, New York City Public Schools. I am being pro CTE, but dismantling DOE.
I know.
I am wondering what you know about Perkins funding of what might happen.
Yeah, so I believe yesterday was CTE Day on the Hill. And
Just quickly, Perkins funding funds CTE programs for folks who may not know.
Yeah, so I do think that it is CTE right now is one of those rare areas of bipartisan support. I think again, this is just me speculating. I think in a scenario where we see a proposal to dismantle the department, I would see probably CTE being moved somewhere else versus zeroed out, if that helps. Do I think that there's a scenario where all that actually happens? I think it's unlikely, but I don't think we would see a dismantling of Perkins. I think we would see it, kind of move somewhere to be more efficient or something like that. I don't know.
Cass Conrad from the Petrie Foundation. Maria, I'm just curious, one of the early executive orders called out philanthropy in particular. I'm curious, I know that's not exactly in your line of sight, but I'm curious if you've heard anything more about plans for engaging philanthropy at the federal level.
I haven't yet. And you all are probably closer to a lot of this than I am. I kind of have a general feeling that philanthropy is kind of taking a step back and trying to see what's the best places for them to step in this moment. But I haven't heard anything from the federal side yet.
Good morning, Maria. When we think about the proposals to reduce the size of the federal workforce and these long-term federal employees who worked in labor, worked in education, what type of strategies can we as a council think about in potentially tapping in and leveraging some of those resources to understand their experiences and to help us be more successful in the outcomes we're trying to achieve?
I think it's a great idea because there's going to be a lot of talent that is, going to be on the market. And I think looking to see how to deploy that talent in new ways, I think will be important. And I think like New York City is a like really right place to do that. So I think it's a really good way to be thinking about it, for sure. So I think
There's also an organization that was recently set up called Civic Match, particularly for public sector employees who are transitioning to new jobs, starting with the federal government. So if anybody wants more information on that, Daniel, our office has it. Any other questions? Oh, Katie, then Danielle.
Hi, Katie. Thank you. I read in Project 2025 about IRAP. What's your position on IRAP?
on IRAP.
Which is the
Yeah.
individual, they're very pro this apprenticeship that's not registered.
Yes, so in the first Trump administration, they did roll out IRAPs. And it was met with a lot of resistance, both from organized labor and from, Democrats on the Hill. The Biden administration rescinded it. I think there is a chance it's going to come back. And at JFF, we are most likely going to be like focusing our conversations on what makes a quality apprenticeship and what are the elements of a quality apprenticeship, and kind of stay out of the registered versus IRAP argument, because I didn't think that like served us well. We were in that argument last time. I don't think it served us really well. So we really think, really focusing on quality, going deep on that, and really, what works for the workers and the apprentices and what works for the employers is how we're thinking about navigating that.
And we have a great report that has threshold criteria on what we think are quality apprentices, because again, knowing that while registered apprenticeship is very much the gold standard, for various reasons, folks may not register. And we also want to make sure we invite as many people into apprenticeship and lift up programs that meet some high quality. And also, of course, differentiate between a boot camp and an internship. So we're welcome, open source. It's all JFF. You're welcome to take that as the threshold criteria. We would love that. Diallo.
Good morning, Diallo Shabazz here on behalf of the New York P-TECH Leadership Council. We support the management and expansion of P-TECH programs statewide, and we know that JFF has done some great work with P-TECH programs nationally since you spoke from the IBM Foundation. During the previous administration, Trump sent a representative from his administration to go visit P-TECH programs in the state of New York in the same way that Obama came when he was in office. It's a very CTE in general, but also P-TECH is a very bipartisan issue. And in the memo that the previous Trump administration sent to the New York State Education Department, they called out P-TECH specifically as the type of program that should receive additional funding. Based on a lot of the research that JFF has been doing, we're wondering how to kind of parse this in-between space, especially as the state and nationally people try to figure out how to expand access to early college high schools and improve funding for those for low-income students. Not that we can say low-income or students of color anymore, but wondering if there are any strategies or recommendations based on what JFF has been looking at in terms of how we may want to approach continuing to support these programs.
Yeah, so we're definitely in agreement with you. Like, we really support the P-TECH model, really anything that has to do with early college high schools or dual enrollment, or what we call the big blur, which is kind of like our next vision to how bring these systems together. So I think, again, industry-led models, I think, are going to be very appealing right now. So I think P-TECH's a great example of that. I think that the general theme of career-connected learning, even though that's a term that kind of came up during the Biden years, I think that general theme will continue. But I think I think now's the time to keep building that momentum and the messaging.
Any other questions? Last question. Thank you, Maria.
Thank you for having me. And I would say it's don't stop planning. Don't let kind of the chaos and the confusion take you away from all the good planning that needs to be happening now to get ready for the future. But we've been just so thrilled, Jeff, to work with so many folks in New York City over the years. So happy to be here today.
Thank you, Maria. Really appreciate your work, and I will be in touch over the next few months as we all continue to navigate and really try to understand. But I'm definitely taking heart in what you're saying, because New York City is definitely going much more to a career-connected model in terms of learning, and really braiding learning from work into educational and academic pathways. It's something that I'm particularly passionate about. So if we can lean into that and do more now, super exciting. So I am going to wrap up this part. I'm going to do a little bit of highlight reel for everyone, because I do want to not let 2024 go by without recognizing the great work of our team, but more importantly, the city and our partnerships with all of you, as well as many people outside of this room. It was a very busy year, and we know 2025 is going to be, if not as busy, more so. And I think one of the things sort of I take heart in this, and I've been telling this to my team, is one thing we know for sure, and we've already seen for 2025, is we're going to see a lot of uncertainty, and we're going to need to navigate that. And when you need to navigate uncertainty, what really needs to happen is you really need to lean into your partnerships and your relationships. And that's what I see. That's why I'm so excited that in 2024, we launched the Workforce Development Council, and really reconstituted the Workforce Development Board. So we have all of us to work together as we navigate through this. And that's what we'll do. So that's a big achievement that I want everybody here to clap around, because we all have been contributing so much. And how we thought 2024 was busy, 2025 is going to be even more busy. We launched our committees. So there's 6 committees. So I'm going to give a brief overview of what all the committees have been doing. And we're really, really going to lean into the committees for 2025. So they've been busy, and there's also more detail in your packet, but I do want to just give you some highlights. So you heard a little bit from Michelle on the Outreach and Communications Committee. We have Workforce Wednesdays. We're trying to lift up all the good work. Please, again, do your survey, get your government, your communications person's contact, because we want to not just lift up the work that's coming out of our office or out of the administration, but very much the work that's coming out of all of your work individually and with your partnerships, and really lift it up and show how much we're doing as a community. So please, we have a couple of folks here from our team on comms. Danielle and Grant, raise your hands if you're in the room, as well as Matt Beller, who leads that work. The 5-Borough Future of Work Committee, who's on that? Raise your hands. You guys have been busy. There's been a lot going on in terms of really looking at AI, and particularly AI literacy and what that means for the workforce, but also thinking about what it means for the structure of the workforce and the dynamic. So we all know there's going to be more to come on that this year in general. I feel like everything that happens, there's AI at the end of it, or at the beginning of it, or at the middle of it. And then also really continuing to look at remote and hybrid work. And then the demographics. So our workforce is aging. That's true across the country. It's true in New York. What does that mean? How do we think about that? The Data Impact Committee has really begun its work in the past few months to examine existing data tools and consider ways to enhance resources. And I'm thrilled, beyond thrilled to say that we have a new staff member starting at the end of the month as an executive director for Data and Impact to work with that group. Apoorv Mehrotra is starting, and he's an expert in the field, and he's been consulting with us. So you'll probably see him at that committee and at next meeting of ours. Expanding apprenticeships, who's on that? I know Angie's. So obviously this is near and dear to the work of what we've been talking about. How do you braid learning and earning? Apprenticeship does that as the gold standard. I'm thrilled to say in November for Workforce Week, which was in November last year and April this year, so get ready for that. We were able to announce that we were halfway to our moonshot goal of 30,000 by 2030. We hit 15,000 by the end of the year. Super exciting. Always the first 15 is the easier 15. The next 15 is going to be harder, but super excited about that. We're going to have, I'll talk a bit about that later. So thank you for that team for really helping and working with the Apprenticeship Accelerator. Early career success has met quite a few times, sort of trying to understand the landscape of programs, all the different programs, the different types of populations, and really thinking that through. And has decided, which makes a lot of sense, to really lean into As we spoke at the Workforce Development Board meeting in December, one of the things we need to do this year is a local plan, really leaning into that plan so that we make sure the local plan really is ensuring that young people launch into careers successfully here. And then last not least, the executive committee of the board, which is the Workforce Development Board and is the fiduciary responsible party for WIOA. We got a lot of on WIOA. We're going to be doing more on that and hearing more about that. As Maria suggested, it's obviously key to our workforce system. For folks who don't know, we currently get about $100 million through the federal government through WIOA. It's really the backbone of our Workforce One system and a lot of our youth programs related to workforce. And in case you don't know, I think you all do, but I will say it again, New York City has the largest allocation of WIOA of any workforce board in the country. So it's really super important. But of course, in a budget of $110 billion, it's not the only resource we have. Additionally, the executive committee has really stepped up to meet with MOX, Commissioner Flores at MOX, Mayor's Office of Contract Services, who may not know that, and with Mayor's Office of Nonprofit Services to really start figuring out how to address the backlog and not just do a quick fix and catch up, but really what are the structural changes that need to happen so we really can prevent backlogs in the future. In terms of just highlights, there's our end of the year press release, which we tried to capture just some of the highlights. But I just want to again reiterate it for everybody, just so we know how much momentum we've been getting as a field. So one big year in terms of the work around Jobs NYC. Two parts of it. One is the hiring halls. We had over 27 hiring halls serving 10,000 people, and thrilled that we were able to announce on Tuesday as part of Jobs Week that there's now baseline funding in the budget to continue Jobs NYC and doing the hiring halls. And SBS, Yuri and Commissioner Gross have really been taking the lead on that. So that work continues, and that really focusing on going to the neighborhoods where we see high levels of unemployment and making sure we're bringing all of city government services, jobs, training to people where they are. So we're going to continue that work. So that was a big win. We also had the Jobs NYC talent portal. We were able to provide enhancements to that. So go to it. Now there's a regional job board on it, as well as career tips that you can access My Next Move. So we're continuing to build that out. Apprenticeship I talked about, but I do want to highlight one thing. The city's been walking the walk. We have 151 youth apprentices with New York City Public Schools working in over 22 different agencies. And again, I think you all know we have 2 in our office. They're fantastic, and I'm super excited because it looks like they're both going to continue into their 3rd year and go to school locally. So that they've been a huge asset to our office. And so I encourage you all, I think there's open time to take youth apprentices. Eliza, raise your hand. If anyone's interested in having a youth apprentice, I will just say it just adds so much to the office in terms of perspective, energy, and just reflection for all of our staff of and I'll just step aside. We had this fascinating conversation with our youth apprentices. We were having breakfast, and we were talking about everybody what their first phone was, their first cell phone. And then we were talking about what it was like not to have a cell phone. And then we got into pagers. And that's where she's like, what are you talking about? And so there's a lot. It's just that kind of reflection of how the world's changed is really helpful. But then also, one of our big goals is serving young people and making sure they launch. And so having people living that experience in real time, super, super helpful. Community hiring, I'm going to get water, sorry. I have 3 kids, so I actually have been, knock on wood, pretty healthy because I've had everything 10 times over, but I can't seem to talk. Community hiring. So we did our first contract in community hiring in June for a $1.2 billion security guard contract with DCAS, Department of Citywide Administration and Services. And the office has done the rulemaking. The rules are in fact, we're working on that some more. You'll see more contracts coming out with community hiring. We're building out a referral network system So that's super exciting, 2024 and continuing into 2025. We worked with EDC to really look at the green economy and how to grow the green economy. That work will continue. It's critical to New York's resilience. So super excited about that. And we're about at the 1-year anniversary, so more on that soon. I also can't be up here and not highlight the incredible work that's been happening at CUNY and New York City Public Schools to really focus on many, many things, but I want to highlight the focus they've done on really student career success. So Mayor Adams and the Chancellor from CUNY were able to announce a $12 million public-private partnership to really expand the Inclusive Economy Initiative. So that's super exciting to making sure CUNY is really the go-to place for talent in New York City, and that the students are really getting the career readiness and training in their coursework, as well as creating the work-based learning opportunities that they need. Additionally, New York City Public Schools in December announced the expansion of Future Ready to an additional 36 schools. So we now have 135 of our schools that are really focused on how you design school to support career readiness, work-based learning, and really connecting to things like modern youth apprenticeships, as well as just really helping students understand how do their interests align with the job market, and to test out what they might or may not want to do, so they're all better prepared. So that's huge to see that. We were also able to really make significant progress with our Center for Workplace Accessibility and Inclusion in partnership with Mayor's Office for People with Disability, as well as Small Business Services, to really make sure our workforce is and we're positioning people with disabilities well in the workforce and having the supports and all sorts of programs. So that's super exciting. As I said, we chalked up most jobs ever, exciting. So that, again, more work for all of us, because we have to make sure that those jobs are jobs that are really providing economic mobility. And that as those jobs, as we announce more jobs, as many jobs as possible are good jobs that get folks to a family sustaining wage. Additionally, and I'll wrap up here, just as we're going through Jobs Week, we have some announcements coming up today. There's going to be some announcements coming out of Department of Youth and Community Development around some of their new programming. So look for that. Really looking at how do we provide economic mobility and opportunity for folks who reside in communities that really where community violence is most prevalent, and really having targeted programs there. So that's coming out today. And then we'll wrap it up tomorrow. We're going to wrap it up tomorrow with EDC's release of their report on AI. So all very interested in both in terms of how we grow the AI industry here in New York, but also thinking through and laying the groundwork for thinking through some of the implications on workforce. And then we'll wrap up with a great event, and everybody's welcome to come and join us at New Jewish Home tomorrow, where we're going to announce our apprenticeship awards. We're going to announce $2.1 million going towards 9 different programs, apprenticeship programs. So super excited about that. And then as we look ahead to 2025, we have a lot on our plate. I think we got a lot of food for thought today. We know the labor market's changing rapidly. We know that it's changed. We know the demographics are changing. We know technology and AI are changing it. And then we're hearing all about the transitions on the federal level. So one of the things we are going to do is the local plan to really think about how do we get in front of all this, and how do we make sure that our workforce system is well positioned for success through these changes, responding to these changes, and it's dynamic so we can do it in real time. And so it requires really looking across the whole talent and workforce system to identify gaps in services, as well as where we see opportunities. It requires lifting up best practice from all the work that's happening here in New York City, but also really lifting up best practice from what we're seeing across the country. And I think that went back to one of the questions we heard earlier, so I was thrilled to hear that. It means really seeing what we can scale and where we need to tackle some of the barriers to scale, and also identifying additional resources and better braiding together the resources that we do have. And it's going to require engagement with key stakeholders. So we will engage the council and board extensively to get your input, as well as some of your networks. And we'll do a lot of this work primarily through committees. So we'll be talking to all the committee chairs. in the context of this work and really how to lift up what you're seeing, finding, and what you're hoping for. And then we will, of course, engage with other stakeholders, both public and private, and then especially with the agency representatives from the Interagency Talent Cabinet. So we're about to release a request for proposals to get some additional consulting to facilitate this because we know it's urgent and we need to do it at this time because not only do we have the local plan, but because of all we heard today. So more to come on that in the next few weeks. And with that, I'll take a deep breath and say, thank you all. Really appreciate your being here. There's so much happening. As I started my remarks, it's really important that we continue to work together and be in close contact. Our team is here to support Bounce Ideas, and we will be convening folks in multiple ways over the next few months. If anybody wants to have follow-up conversations with Tiffany or with Maria in Jobs for the Future, please don't be shy to reach out to us. We will also provide additional information as it comes through to us. So I want to thank Tiffany. I want to thank Maria. I want to thank Michelle for your remarks, for being here. I want to thank all of you for coming, for EY for hosting, and for the amazing talent team for pulling this all together today. We are going to take a quick about 5-minute break, and then I'm going to turn the mic over. Meryl's like, I can't believe you're taking a break. I'm going to turn the mic over to Meryl Pond and Andrea Powell. We're going to have the Workforce Development Board meeting next, where we'll hear from them. We'll hear from Chris, the director's report, and we'll hear from the agencies that administer and do the great work around WIOA, Department of Youth and Community Development, and Small Business Services. Everyone's welcome to stay, but board members, you have to stay. Thank you all. Thank you.
We're gonna get started, folks.
Please take a seat. I know.
Okay, if anyone who does not have the new thicker board packet, raise your hand, please. All right, good morning all. I am Andrea Powell. I'm the president and CEO of Cooperative Home Care Associates and co-chair of the Workforce Development Board with Narva Pond. We're going to be presiding over the meeting jointly. I will now call the board meeting formally to order. We have a number of substantive updates for the board today. First, Chris Neal, Executive Director, will provide a director's report. Then we'll hear updates on WIOA youth and adult program activities and performance from the Department of Youth and Community Development and the Department of Small Business Services. We will now take a vote on the meeting minutes for the board meeting that took place on December 11th of 2024. You can find the minutes. They came out via email, and they are in the packet that everyone has. So I will need a motion to approve the minutes.
I'll make a motion.
Thank you. Can I have a second? Thank you, Jessica. Perfect. All in favor? Anyone abstaining? We have a motion. It carries. The minutes are approved. Next, we're going to go to Chris giving the director's report.
Thanks, Andrea. Good morning, everybody. Very happy to see that we have a quorum despite the weather, so thank you all for being troopers and coming out. Not as many as we'd hoped for, but certainly a really good showing, so we're happy to see you all today. I wanted to just give a few updates, and I know we're a little bit behind time, so I'm going to be brief. Adolfo, if you could advance to the next slide, please. Thank you. So I'm going to follow a little bit of Maria's lead from Jobs for the Future. Those of you at the December meeting, you heard me and you heard Therese Daly from NYC talk about the state of play. That was December 11th. A lot has changed since then, but where we last left it, if you'll recall, was there was a lot of chaos and uncertainty about what was going to happen. And I think if you didn't already hear it in the news or infer it from today's session, obviously the WIO reauthorization bill didn't pass, but it was very close. It was in the continuing resolution that Congress considered, and that was the package that was put forward. And then, of course, Elon Musk and the Department of Government Efficiency sort of intervened, and there was looking at the bill more closely, and so a mostly clean bill passed. And so WIOA reauthorization was sort of stripped out at the last minute. So WIOA is still as it was, same rules. And ultimately what the bill ended up at was there was still a 50% minimum requirement to spend adult and dislocated worker money on training, but up to 10 percentage points could come from a combination of supportive services for people while they're in training or career services, so like case management or help. So it was getting better. Would still love to see a little more flexibility there. No change to the penalties or the increase in the governor's set aside. But there was some improvement. And so, one of the questions that we have is, so what are the chances that some version of WIO reauthorization will pass in the near future? And I had the great opportunity to go down to DC last month for the U.S. Conference of Mayors Workforce Development Council meeting. It's a great group, and we were lucky enough to hear the two key staff from the House committee that oversees WIOA, the Education and Workforce Committee. And they are like major players in all this. And I asked them the question, like, what would you say the probability is that WIOA reauthorization happens within 6 months and within 2 years? And they gave it about a 50-50 chance within 6 months. They said after that, chances are going to go way down as we move towards other priorities and re-election. They highlighted, notwithstanding what Maria said about Schumer's office, seeing that there certainly is a real real potential for a bipartisan win. So on this slide, you can see there are 2 new chairs for the relevant committees in Congress. So Senator Bill Cassidy is not in the House. In fact, he is in the Senate. And he was the ranking member when Bernie Sanders was the chair of the Health Committee. He is, from what we understand, very pro-WIOA, likes the sort of pro-business aspects of WIOA, but he has apparently said that WIOA reauthorization is not one of his top priorities. That could change, but that's even from what we heard from these House staff members, that's the real barrier. That Representative Tim Walberg, who's the new House, the chair of the House Education and Workforce Committee, that he's invested, that he really, this is a priority for him and others on the committee, but it's really the Senate where we need to influence if we want to see something happen. And again, most of the bill is good. There's just a few things that are still really not good for New York City. So we will obviously keep you abreast of things and remain very actively involved and let you know where we could use your help when the time comes. Okay, next slide. And I got to go real fast because I want to give our agency partners sufficient time. So I also went down to DC in December for the Harkin International Disability Employment Summit. It's named after former Senator Tom Harkin from Iowa. He was one of the original architects of the Americans with Disabilities Act. And it was a great summit, and we got to present on the city's plan. I think we talked about maybe late 2023 to this group. We described the city's plan to advance the careers of people with disabilities. As I think we have updated you, SBS has taken a real lead role in integrating services targeting people with disabilities in its Workforce One Career Center, starting with the Brooklyn Workforce One. And it was a great place to pick up some best practices. Next slide, please. And so the local plan, we talked about this in December. Abby mentioned this. Just as a reminder to those of you who don't know, the local plan is required by WIOA, and we view this as a great opportunity to, it's both a great opportunity and a time where it is urgent and imperative that we really figure out how the system should work and where we put our resources and position ourselves for success going into the future. And so, as Abby said, we are soon to release a request for proposals to get some consulting help to work with all of you and engage you extensively, as well as other external stakeholders, to build a really robust plan and make sure that all voices are heard and that we have a robust plan going forward. Okay. Next slide. Again, I'm trying to cede my time to our agency partners. Just a brief update. You may hear a little bit more about this from our partners, but we talked last time about the request for proposals. And we informed you that, the youth WIOA contracts were awarded. So those are moving, which is great. After some delays, Workforce One, the RFP, the request for proposals, still being reviewed, but that is very much underway and has really good momentum, and we're getting close. On WIOA performance, again, it's been a little less than 2 months since we last met. And we talked extensively last time about the credential attainment rate. A few things have happened since then, which are positive. In fact, very recently, New York State Department of Labor circulated a draft technical advisory that will make it a lot easier for us to recognize credentials where there is extensive employer input into a training as recognized credentials. And that was a little bit unclear. This is a very new turn of events, and it's not even policy yet, but they just had a session yesterday. There's another one today to talk to the local workforce development board directors about what this means and to get input. But all signs are that it's very good for us. It'll make it easier to count more of our trainings, because basically all of our trainings involve employer input, because we want to make sure we are targeting the right jobs and we are offering the right skills and the right experience to make sure people can get those jobs. So that is very positive. Okay, with that, I am done and I will see my time.
morning, everyone. Meryl Pond, the Executive Vice President of Partnership for New York City and Co-Chair of the Workforce Development Board. Thank you, Chris. I want to just pinpoint the importance of the local plan strat with using the local plan opportunity to really develop a strategic plan for the city moving forward. I'm really excited about the increased investment that's being put into this. Abby mentioned the Early Career Success Committee has decided to shift their focus entirely into developing this local plan. And then I also know that members of the board and the council are willing to bring in staff from their organizations to also help bolster that effort as well, so that we can really kind of use this opportunity to pull together all of the stakeholders, all of the partners into something that can really stand the test of time moving forward. So I'm really excited about that and look forward to getting work started. So thank you to the city for the increased investment that was going to be made into that effort. On that note, we're now going to hear a report on the Youth WEO activities and performance from Megan Keenan-Berryman, the Assistant Commissioner of DYC. Thank you.
Good morning, everybody. How are you? Yeah, so at the top of my notes are what is happening with our WEOA youth contracts. We have 40 contracts that are in the pipeline. I'm really excited to share this morning that things are happening. Young people are coming in, they're getting enrolled, and services have started. So while we have pushed the contracts out through Passport and all of our organizations have received their contracts, things are underway and are happening, and that is just super exciting. We have 17 contracts for Learn and Earn, which is our program for high school juniors and seniors. And then we have 23 contracts for Train and Earn, which is our program for young adults who are not working and not in school. Learn and Earn is really focused on making sure that young people graduate and helping them figure out what comes after graduation. And Train and Earn is heavily focused on providing occupational training and job placement. So that's just sort of in a nutshell what's happening there. And we're just super excited that these things are underway. I'll pivot to SYEP. That's coming up. We are slated to serve 100,000 young people this year, just like last summer. Definitely going to put a plug in for work sites. If you want to host a young person, please let me know and I'll connect you to the right people. The application was released on January 21st, and as of this morning, we have over 89,000 applications. So we're way ahead of pace. Thank you. And the application is scheduled to close on February 28th. So let people know if you have young people in your life, they want to apply, now is a great time to do that. And I guess the last thing that I want to raise this morning is that as part of Jobs Week, DYCD is launching the Community Resources for Employment and Development Program. There should be an announcement later today on that, but that's about $15 million going out to 8 organizations to serve adults 18 to 40 who are impacted by community violence. So we're really excited to be kicking that off too. It's a new area of work for us, but it's a really important area of work. And we're really looking forward to what comes next with that. So that's really all I have, Chris. Any questions? So I either did a fantastic or a terrible job. Either way, thanks everybody. I'm around if you have questions.
All right, thanks, Megan. Appreciate it. I will now hear a report on adult WEO activities from Yuri Karloff, the Deputy Commissioner from the Department of Small Business.
Good morning, everybody. Happy Jobs Week. This is kind of loud. When Abby Jo was talking about phones, I just had a flashback. I had a duck phone in my bedroom growing up. So it was shaped like a duck. It was connected to one of those spiral cords. And then I had one where you could see the guts of the phone. It used to light up and you used to see all the parts. Anyway, flashback. So I have some great updates for all of you in a number of different areas. Just wanted to talk briefly about the Workforce One centers. We have a very strong network. We've seen great increases in foot traffic, great increases in wages, as our report showed as well. Seen somewhat of a decrease in job opportunities and direct connections to jobs over previous years. And as we've talked about in previous settings, doing a lot of work around that, hosting strategy development sessions, for example, with senior Workforce One leaders, revising policies really to increase cooperation among centers and giving them more flexibility to be able to recruit across different sectors for jobs, and also creating a central business development. And along the lines of business development, we really welcome the support. I was just talking to one of the members of the board in the break here around helping to connect Workforce One centers to even more larger employers and kind of building those networks. So we welcome your ideas around that. Even before the business development team formally gets off the ground, we would love to build more partnerships and welcome the board's advice and guidance on that. Also wanted to highlight our work with job seekers with disabilities, as Abby Jo and as Chris mentioned. We're very fortunate to be hosting Scion as part of the Workforce One Center Network and our team. That's the New York Systems Change and Inclusive Opportunities Network, which really aims to improve education, training, and employment opportunities for people with disabilities. Throughout our Workforce One centers, we have 3 staff located at One Liberty Plaza that does that work. And actually this morning, as we speak, they're hosting a conference, a gathering of advocates from across the city and across the state, including our partners at NYSDL around how we can better support job seekers with disabilities. So that's very important work. Also wanted to talk about trainings. We have a lot of wonderful things going on. Commissioner Gross, who's here with us today, she and I had the good fortune of attending many graduations, 2 of which recently of our NCLEX nursing program up at Lehman College that helps individuals who are trained as registered nurses in countries abroad in order to sit for their nursing exam here. That's a very successful program. We have many people that go from having salaries, maybe working as home health aides or in occupations paying $30,000, $40,000 a year to increase their wages to 6-figure salaries when they graduate from that program. And wonderful, definitely shout out. And our healthcare finance and operations program, which used to be called medical billing, which has a lot of partnerships, with New York Presbyterian and NYU Langone, for example. And we have a longstanding partnership with the Harvard Business School alumni in New York City that helps support that program and help make job connections as well. So we have many different events going on with relation to training. We had our Made in New York Stagecraft Boot Camp. That's a partnership with the Mayor's Office of Media and Entertainment and also Roundabout Theater. They had one of their showcase nights where you could actually see individuals, what happens in a theater production, both the actors performing and also behind the scenes. So everything related to wardrobe, sound, that was all on display. It wasn't in the back. So it's really wonderful to see our training programs in action and making an impact. Also talking about RFPs, giving you a brief update on that. Our Workforce One Center RFP is steadily underway. We are very close to concluding that process in terms of scoring and evaluation, and we hope to be able to make announcements and begin, negotiating with the top bidders relatively soon. We are very, very close to the finish line, so we're excited about that. We've also been in the process of working on a number of RFPs on the training side as well. We have our vessel program that's vocational English and training for individuals, especially New Yorkers that want to get careers in the food service field, and also our famous and highly regarded construction site safety training program, where we are RFPing that this year as well. So really excited about that. We've had increased training participation this year. We've had somewhat of a decrease in hires and promotions as a result of those programs. Some of that is, related to, not having as much time to do validations in terms of verifying jobs. This meeting is a little bit earlier this year in the quarter in terms of reporting. And there's also some decline in promotions linked to our customized training program, but we're looking into that more. And we're going to make sure to end the fiscal year on a really solid note. Just really wanted to talk briefly about New Yorkers, as I believe Deputy Mayor Raspberry alluded to. We have helped more than 1,000 New Yorkers get jobs over the past year and a half. So we're extraordinarily proud of that. Under Commissioner Gross's leadership, we've made that a top priority, making sure that our New Yorkers receive the services that they need. And over 10,000 New Yorkers have been served. Over 4,100 have been referred to employers. So we're extremely proud of that work. Also wanted to talk a little bit about Jobs NYC. So we're very excited to be partnering with Talent and other city agencies to really bring that work forward. We've at this point had 31 hiring halls. It's actually up from 27 now at this point. We've had recent ones. We had a mini hiring hall devoted to legal the legal sector. Hiring for roles like attorney, paralegal, legal assistant. Saw almost 200 people at that event. We had a recent hiring hall at Bronx Works up in the Bronx near the courthouse. I think it might be a new record. We saw close to 450 job seekers. We had more than 30 organizations at that event, about 27 employers and about a half dozen resource organizations at that event. So we're very excited about carrying this work forward, to have baseline funding to be able to carry it forward. And as I think was alluded to earlier, since that work began, Jobs NYC work began more than a year ago, it has served over 10,000 job seekers. So that's pretty remarkable. It's having a lot of outreach and a lot of impact. And we're very, very excited about seeing it go forward. And the recent Bronx event, I think for the first time, we saw a 100% employer satisfaction rate. So of all 27 employers that came to that event, they were all highly satisfied with the event. So we're very excited about building on that momentum, building that work going forward. And I'm grateful to my team, grateful to Commissioner Gross and to our partners at the Mayor's Office of Talent to move that work forward. Just wanted to, briefly, lastly, talk about something a little bit wonky, but very, very important. It's our work on the credential attainment rate, which Chris talked about briefly. We're very, very focused on that work. We formed an internal task force and have dedicated members of my team. Several of them are actually here today. And we're laser focused on making sure that we're able to meet that standard this year. A lot of it is the devil is in the details, as you know, and the details are important. So, we're working very closely with NYC, with the state. We're making a lot of work to know each and every person that will be in that measure, and making sure that we're tracking the credentials that they attain. And just wanted to let the board know that we're that we think that work is highly critical, and that we're following up the discussion that we had on it from our previous board meeting. So I hope I wasn't too long, but that's our report. I wanted to thank the board and the council for their support. We're grateful for your partnership. And, I want to echo Abby Jo in saying that we think this is going to be a fabulous year. 2025 is going to be the best year for workforce yet.
Thank you, Yuri, because everyone was super efficient. We have time for a couple. Thank you, Chris. We have time for like one question. Does anyone have any questions or comments?
Thank you, Yuri. Appreciate how quickly and concisely you went through the information. You mentioned there was a drop in the actual number of jobs. Does the team have any idea what's behind what prompted that drop? And is there anything that we can do to support helping to increase the number of job listings?
Great question. Great question. Thank you for that. So in general, there's been a general constraint among job opportunities and among hires, not just within SBS, but in other workforce systems in New York City generally. But we're not going to rest on our laurels. I think part of it is, at least to talk specifically about the adult workforce system, we've seen in the past couple of years a greater concentration of certain types of jobs. So jobs, for example, in security, in home health, warehouse, food service. And while many of those opportunities are a really, really great fit for some segment of our job seekers or some subset of our population, we have a fair amount of job seekers who are looking for different opportunities, and we're finding in some cases that there's not enough diversity in terms of the jobs that we offer in our system. So, we're taking a number of efforts. We're starting up a business development team. We're taking advantage of personal introductions and personal connections, like we've just in the past week talked to a consultant working with New York Presbyterian, talked to some Cushman and Wakefield high-level people in HR there. We're working through our business improvement districts, for example, and some trade associations. My colleague Linda Wynn, who is here with us, our new Chief Community Engagement Officer, she's helping to lead some community engagement efforts and some business engagement efforts. But definitely, I would like to, Commissioner Gross and I were actually just talking about this. We would welcome any advice and guidance and connections that the board has. No connection is a bad connection, and we want to be able to follow up. We want to get the good word out about Workforce One to a more diverse group of employers. And also, one of the things that I should have mentioned when I was talking about Jobs NYC, but I didn't, is that those job fairs, the types of employers that they've brought in, and also the types of job seekers has contributed to the diversity of our system. So we found that while individuals seeking more entry-level jobs often come to the front door to our Workforce One centers, individuals coming to the job fairs, to the hiring halls, are seeking often more mid-level positions. And that's also bringing in a more diverse group of employers, but we could always use more. So we welcome the boards and the council's support in that regard.
Thank you. All right, Cass.
I don't know, I'm gonna ask, right behind you. I hesitate to ask this because I feel like it's opening a can of worms, but we've heard now from Chris this morning and from Maria that the future of WIOA is quite questionable. I'm curious on two fronts, kind of what's the impact to the city if WIOA is not reauthorized, and what is the scenario planning that is happening or should be happening around that as a potential future outcome?
So to get wonky just for a second, WIOA isn't currently authorized. So when it was passed in 2014, it was authorized for 6 years. It's not authorized. That being said, there are many other federal programs that aren't authorized, and as long as Congress keeps, to the extent that it has the power of the purse string these days, it has the power to, allocate budget for it. So we're in uncharted territory, really, in terms of what does it mean not to be authorized, because I think we just don't know what actions the Department of Government Efficiency might take, as Maria pointed out. It puts us at more risk, right? I don't think we're at the we're not sort of, we need to think about what a world looks like with less WIOA. I don't think WIOA is going to go away. It has historically had a lot of bipartisan support. Republicans really like WIOA. I think they think that there could be improvements made to it, but I'm bullish on the idea that WIOA will continue to persist.
Yeah, I'll just add on to what Chris was saying. Again, in the city's budget of $110 billion, WIOA is $100 million. It does fund critical programs, including the Workforce One centers, the 18 centers that SBS manages, as well as the programs we just heard about from Megan at DYCD. So a critical part of our youth strategy. That's why this work we're doing now is so important, to make clear the value proposition of the investments, because clearly these investments need to continue. And if we need to find funding from other places, such as city tax levy, going to the state, trying to get more funding there, trying to raise more private funding and philanthropy so we can braid it together, it's absolutely what's needed to do. So we're sharing, and just so I think everybody knows this, but I want to make sure we say this. The City Hall and the agencies are looking across all the federal programs right now, because WIOA is only one of many in terms of federal, and trying to figure out what the different scenarios are going to be, not knowing which, when, and how. But again, I think that's why sort of coming together, having a plan, thinking through the value proposition. And we all know in this room, investments in workforce are investments. They're not costs. They're investments that result in people earning money, able to sustain their families, and cost savings to the city, state, and federal government in terms of less reliance on public benefits, particularly if it's a good paying job. So that's the story we will continue to tell. We will make the case. We will need everyone here to think about it. We will need good data. So for those who are running programs, as much as you can get good data of what your investment is into talent and workforce development, whether it's through a workforce program, an education program, or an employer training program, we need that data so we can continue to make the case. But yes, we're doing the best we can. Any ideas and thoughts that you have, we'd love to do it. We'd love to have it so that we are prepared for whatever happens.
And I would just add, I think that what we heard from Maria and what we all know in this room, although I agree with everything that you just said, Abby, we need a political plan here. This is less about telling the story and more about getting it to the right people. So I think that's what we need to work together on identifying those key stakeholders and the relationships that we all have. I mean, Maria touched on this. Some other folks in the audience touched on that. So that's what I'm looking for in the short term. And then we'll also continue to tell the stories. Thank you. Thank you for all of the board members that came out today. Really appreciate it. We'll be sharing information about our next quarterly meeting in the spring soon. NYC Talent will be in touch via email. But I also say, if you have questions, comments, ideas, please do not hesitate to send them to me, to send them to Chris. We're working a lot behind the scenes to get information to the board members and also to other folks. So please do not hesitate. Any good thoughts? Do I have a motion to adjourn? A second? Meeting adjourned. Oh, all in favor. Sorry, all in favor. Sorry. Good. Daniel just looked panicked in the back. All in favor. Okay. Meeting adjourned. Thank you very much. Have a good day, everyone.